Welcome everyone to Behind the Proposals. We'll definitely get into some of the weeds today, so we're really excited to talk about OpenTelemetry and our proposal process. Just maybe a quick show of hands in case, yeah, everybody's hand up, yeah. People who know about OTel? Okay, people who have contributed to OTel? Awesome. People who have written an OTAP? There we go, okay, cool, awesome. So we definitely have some things we can talk about here. Awesome. So to start us off, my name is Tyler. Tyler Yahn. I'm a maintainer in a lot of OpenTelemetry Go stuff and all kinds of things. Not really focused on me today. So yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm here to talk to you about this design process. OpenTelemetry itself has a lot of great process around design and introducing new design. Hopefully, it's something that we can talk about at a broader community level, something that is more applicable to other projects. So yeah, let's jump in. To start off, let's meet our panel. Yeah, I want to just jump in really quick. Maybe if each one of you can say your name, your relationship to OpenTelemetry, and I'm going to go with dinosaur. What's your favorite dinosaur? Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Robert.
Can it be T-Rex? Is it the correct answer?
It can, but it's the wrong answer.
Okay, okay, so my name is Robert Pająk. I come from Poland, from Krakow. And from OpenTelemetry, I'm a specification sponsor, a maintainer in Go and .NET Automatic Instrumentation. Yeah, I think that's enough for my site.
My name is Liudmila. I'm with Grafana Labs now, even that the title of the session might say differently. I'm a TC member, maintainer of semantic conventions, and I'm not into dinosaurs, I'm sorry.
Triceratops.
There you go.
I'm Trask, Microsoft. I'm on the governance committee, and I would say my main interest and focus within OpenTelemetry is instrumentation and semantic conventions.
Do you have a favorite dinosaur?
Triceratops.
Oh, okay, sorry. I'll start with that since it's the hardest. I'll go with the Ichthyosaurus.
There we go. All right.
Which is just one I remembered.
No, that's good. Yeah.
All right, I'm Josh. I'm on the technical committee, and I do semantic conventions, Weaver, a few other things, contributed to some of the SDKs. Yeah, worked on the metric spec back in the day.
Awesome. Okay, so let's ground the conversation. Can one of you walk us through what an OTAP is? Just essentially building out what it is, what sort of thresholds are involved with it. Maybe just go into that. Yeah.
Yeah, so OTAP is an open telemetry enhancement proposal. Generally what an OTAP is, it's a description of what you want to change, why you want to change it, how you're going to change it, and then questions that need to be answered and that sort of thing. This goes into the OpenTelemetry specification repository, and we require a lot of approvers. So I think by definition we only need 4, but we tend to look for community engagement and approval on these things before we help them go through. But the proposal is a direction for OpenTelemetry to go. It is not necessarily exactly what you will build or exactly what the spec is. It's meant to be kind of the shape of the design, the direction, and the rationale behind moving that direction.
Awesome. But now, is that it? Or just their OTAPs? I mean, there's definitely a lot of other different things I've seen in the OpenTelemetry community. Maybe Trask, maybe you can explain a little bit about other design ideas in other different areas.
Sure. So I think one of the important distinctions is when is something an OTAP versus when is it just a specification PR. And so something that needs a more high level, what I like to think of is if you're going to write a spec PR, if it's fairly straightforward and you can get approvals on it and you can get it merged, then that's great. But a lot of times these discussions are complicated or contentious. Sometimes they're simple but contentious. And that's where an OTAP is great because it's really focused on, as Josh said, the why, the rationale, and defining the high-level vision which sometimes low-level details are important in those, but it allows you, a lot of those low-level details aren't important, and so it allows you to focus that conversation and get consensus.
Yeah, so I think about OTAP as like a step of the process that makes you focus on the problem and not a solution. So you spend deliberate effort to agree in the community that this problem should be solved without drowning in the details. If you send a spec PR and you need to put an endless PR description and say it's the first step or the end step in this long thing, it's probably this PR description should be in an OTAP, and this PR should come later on.
So can I ask maybe just a broader question from maybe, Robert, maybe you can be on the hot seat here. OTAP seems pretty formalized, right? And there's been a lot of them in OpenTelemetry. What do you think is the kernel of like value in OpenTelemetry with these OTAPs? Like, what if somebody, in the audience, they're not in OpenTelemetry and they want to bring this back to their SIG? What is something that like you think needs to be there in these design proposals that we include?
Okay, so first of all, I want to say personally that if possible, I will not write an OTAP. I think it's just a last resort, but as Liudmila said, like the important thing is, first of all, I think that if you start to write an OTAP, you need to make sure that you have someone who will contribute to it, because otherwise it will be an abandoned work basically. And the important thing is getting the motivation, the background, the use cases. So more and having like, understanding, explaining the business value, I would say, and one the feature set is important. And I think this kind of things are often more important than even the features, because if there's everything is possible in my opinion. Maybe not everything, but a lot of things in software engineering is impossible. But the thing is, do we really care, or is it even something that we should pay our focus on? So I think this first part is very vital for the OTAP, even for the reviewers, so that they when they review the PR, the OTAP, they do not nitpick each decision, which is the second part in my opinion. So like an implementation proposal, trade-offs, different variations, how it can be implemented. Yeah, I think I'm done, and yeah, that's it.
No, that's a great answer. Yeah, thanks. I think it actually is a great segue too, because I think I kind of want to talk, we got a good idea of like the structure, good idea of like maybe the content of an OTAP. So let's get more into talking about, what happens in these OTAPs. And maybe just to start it off, people, right? Like that was something you were definitely mentioning. People are important. People are a part of the community. So who needs to agree on this, right? Because an OTAP just is, it's words on a page, right? It's the people at the end of the day. And who are these people? OpenTelemetry is composed of, we got the governance committee, we've got technical committees, maintainers, people, and end users. Like, there's a lot of people, right? And who needs to be in the room? Who can say no? Who can say yes? I see Josh is ready to jump in here, so yeah.
Yeah, well, I think to answer that, basically there's the rules as written, which is there's a process, there's the formal people who have to approve. So there's like a set of people who are allowed to have a green check mark, and we need 4 of those green check marks to merge an OTAP. In practice, though, what you want is people who are good in the area of the proposal you're making, or who are considered experts in that area to agree. And the honest answer is, in OpenTelemetry, we have a veto culture, generally, or at least we've been working through getting out of a veto culture where the loudest voice against you wins. And so you have to resolve those comments. And one thing we are working on is trying to figure out how to make sure if you have someone who is attempting to veto a proposal, but that voice does not represent the consensus of the ecosystem, that we can still move forward with OTAPs. Or in some cases, I think we might talk about an OTAP later, but there's been a few recent ones specifically around logging and events. OpenTelemetry, when we added logging, it was very contentious. A lot of people were trying to limit the scope, and based on usage and feedback, it's grown. And so every single one of those OTAPs, we kind of waited until we had 12 to 13 approvers. And the reason why is because even in the decision-making teams in OpenTelemetry, like the technical committee, there was not consensus at all on the direction. And so it really kind of depends on your proposal and what's going on, who's going to be important. And I think what I'd recommend is, if you want to know who the real decision makers are, it's okay to ask. It's okay to like put that in the PR of like, okay, who do we think we need to have on this to get this through? We do talk about these in like our specification SIG, but I would argue that in practice, there's rules as written, but in practice, it's the approvers depend on the nature of the proposal you're making, and those are the folks that you need, and that's kind of how we operate in practice.
Yeah, I would say that I really like the consensus building side of it, and the event OTEP actually had 20 approvals, and so one thing that I like is the more contentious the OTEP, the more approvals that I want to see on it. I want to make sure that this really is a community consensus, even if there's one or two outliers. I do think a critical part of that is, and we saw with like the event OTEP, there were initially a lot of people against it, and it changed over time as we listened to feedback and introduced things and modified things. And I think it's really important to really listen to that opposition to it and to make sure that you really understand what they're saying. Because too often, especially in PRs, people talk back and forth over each other. And so that's another area where I think that our weekly SIG specification SIG meeting is super valuable, because it gives us some face time to work through some of the nuances and understand what somebody is really talking about versus the words they wrote were what made sense in their brain and their contextual perspective, but your perspective might not understand what they were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. I love the idea of what you just said about you want to build consensus, and listening is really important there in trying to build that. Robert, Liudmila, do you have any more ideas? Maybe we can talk about these contentious OTEPs, the events, the log, or any other OTEPs and proposals you've worked on that have been of disagreement. How did you go about resolving these sort of disagreements?
So ask Trask to help. Well.
Just a heads up, Trask is really good at this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So it's important to listen. It's also important to be assertive sometimes. That either other people may try to drown you in implementation details, or they would like you to push for their agenda, and sometimes you can discuss it with them. And you have to stop somewhere and say no, and this is what I'm pushing for. But only Trask, not me, but Trask knows how to make it in the way that people are friends. So people perspective, how you actually work with them, how you listen, it's important. Sometimes more important than the content. And like these discussions we have, they are great for the community. We learn a lot. We come up with different ideas. Even if it's contentious, it's not merged, it's fine. We build some common understanding. We build relationships. One thing I wanted to mention, that in many cases you don't get any feedback. And this is equivalent of rejection, because you don't get people in the community who think that we should be working on this. And this is something, it's a hard truth. I wish contributors understood more, and I, like years ago, understood better than lack of feedback means that it doesn't hit the pain point or something in the community.
Yeah, maybe the community, right? That's kind of an interesting one as well. So at this point in the OTEP, in the early design process in OpenTelemetry, how much is maybe like the end user considered in this process? Is that a part of resolving these discussions or resolving this disagreement at all, or finding maybe some motivation for things that are languishing without any sort of events? Robert, is that something maybe you can comment on?
So I think that recently, for instance, I think it was for instance, for complex attributes OTEP, we were during this OTAP we added this kind of we were thinking about the strategy, how to announce it and how to gather feedback. So we were adding blog posts to increase the awareness of the change. So before it's landed in the spec or we do further changes, people are at least notified. And I think that for each of these blog posts, we are also creating GitHub issues or discussions, so people could at least have a possibility to react, so that we can look at. I'm not sure that if people are really looking. We do not get a lot of feedback from end users. At least we are not getting notified person, like per person as a SIG. But sometimes if you do, like, I'm from Poland, so I'm a Slavic, so I know that if someone in Poland wouldn't like the design, they would say it right off the bat. They will not care at all. They will just complain and complain. So maybe sometimes getting no feedback from the end users when you announce it is good feedback and positive feedback that we are doing a good job. Yeah. And maybe to last thing, even to the previous example about community and stuff, sometimes when I have trouble for myself, I find it very helpful that I have other people. And I remember that a few times when I had some problem, I decided just to not show up during this SIG meeting and just add it to the agenda and check if people got interested. And sometimes other people were just driving. Maybe I was just also getting like nervous that maybe I have some negative energy and whatever. I'm just afraid. Let's see how it works without me. And sometimes it works. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a great strategy. I think you're kind of building off of Trask's comment of just listening. That's a great way to do that. Just not show up.
Yeah, stop talking, just listen.
Yeah. But also, I think you're talking a little bit about like engagement with that community, right? So how has that started to weigh on decision making, right? OpenTelemetry is used thousands of places, a lot of places in production at this point, right? How has that changed your approach to design? What are some of the things that you are thinking now compared to the earlier days? And so, since it's one of those, I'm going to ask Trask this question because you're one of the original members, if I remember correctly, of OpenTelemetry. So yeah, I want to hear how this has evolved as OpenTelemetry has become more stable. How do you look at design proposals at these days compared to 5 years ago?
Yeah, it's a lot harder when you have a lot of users and a lot of people relying on the stability of your project and of the artifacts that they're consuming. At the same time, stagnation is not an option. And so we have to find ways to move our community forward, move the project forward in ways that respect the user's reliance on our software and their reliance on the stability. And that's not easy.
Right? Yeah, 100%. Right? You kind of pay this stability tax in a sense, right? Because it weighs on your design opinion. You don't have a green field anymore, right? So let's talk breaking changes. Yeah, let's jump into that then. If that's going to be the case, that's the logical next thing to talk about. Is say there's an existing feature that has a better design. I don't know. Maybe there's an OTEP you can think of here. And yeah, how did you look at that and say that design, we should go about that. We should try to take some steps in the community. We should try to reach out and make that change. Or maybe there's others that you have in mind that you looked at and you're like, that's not optimal, but I think that's just the way it's going to live. So yeah, maybe
break users.
Yes, I think, didn't I put that in all caps once? Something like that? No, so when it comes to breaking changes, I might be one of the people proposing most of those recently. So I can take the answer. Everything has to be grounded in end user usage, right? Like once you release your software and it gets used by people, that's a sign that you're doing something right, but it also is like a relationship that you have with that user. You need to not break them. You need to have that be a primary focus. And yet, if you don't evolve, as we were saying, basically stagnation is death in tech. And so we need to evolve, we need to expand. And so you have to look at how people are actually using your product. There is what we advertise as stability and what we say, and then there's how people actually use it. And that should be the grounding point for any discussion. That, if you can point at that and figure out what that is, that grounds almost all the proposal discussion to the point where we can come to a resolution of, no, people aren't using it the way you're saying. And then there are times where people are using it in a way you don't want them to in the future. And so you have to find a way to resolve that. But when it comes to breaking change, it's usually a dance between we need to evolve to account for something we weren't aware of before. That always happens and you can't avoid it. Like the world changes. You have to balance that with how people use it and break and like what they're doing today. And usually what this means is you want to give them a path from A to B where the value of the thing you're providing is much higher than the cost of the change to them, and give them a period of transition. And so we're really focused on that, of these periods of transition, this advertising, this socializing, but we also need to make sure that they understand the value of what we're giving them. If we propose a change that they don't see as valuable, they're not going to move. And if your goal is to evolve the project and your users don't move with you, you have done something incredibly wrong, right? So that's kind of the foundation behind how we think about breaking change, or how I do. And you can blame me for a lot of the ones that are coming. So.
Trask is whispering that we should talk about span events. So we had two things in the specification that are kind of similar, the logs and span events. And we couldn't tell our users when to use which. Well, you can make arguments in one way or another, but we had endless amount of discussions in the community. I think people that are outside of the room, this room in general, don't know that span events are being deprecated, and they keep using them. And we still didn't codify the outcome. We don't want people to use span events. We want people to use events. It was not an easy decision to make. One thing, like the example of listening, is that, okay, the people who write telemetry, they can write it regardless. They can write log or they can write span event. And then the SDK behavior may be different depending on their preferences. The listening part was that, okay, there are backends that don't support logs. They support span events, though, and how we can make this change work reasonably well for them. And one of the examples was that, okay, the span events are deprecated for API users. They are still legit on the OTLP if you want to ingest logs as span events. So I had another thought, but I forgot it. So sorry.
No worries. That was great. I think that's great. Go ahead.
And tying that to what Josh was talking about transition periods, with span event deprecation, there's a very thoughtful, like, here's how to transition. Here's a transition period where we can support both. You can double pump. You can, opt in, opt out. But that transition period is critical.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I think what I'm hearing from you as a mature project now. These sort of deprecation strategies, these sunset strategies, are now parts of design, right? Like that's definitely something that has come about as we have grown the project, as the project has become adopted, and we have these better ideas. Like deprecation strategies have to be a part of the design, right?
And it's a tax that we have to pay now. With semantic convention, as we broke HTTP semantic conventions, we went through a whole migration plan, and that was a big tax on our maintainers, on our instrumentation authors, to implement these opt-in, opt-out, double pumping strategies. So it's not free, but as a mature project, something that we do have to do.
So I want to change the narrative around this being a tax, because I've never worked on a system that had users where you don't have to do this, right? This is an opportunity. It's not a tax. But more importantly, some of the most clever code you'll ever write and be super proud of is when you figure out how to go from V1 to V2 without breaking people. Like, there's some really cool opportunities for us to be clever and really use our engineering efforts here. And I really want us not to think of this as a tax, right? I think a problem I see sometimes, and OpenTelemetry had this very early, is we wanted our code to be pretty. And I think you have to pick between I want pretty code or I want code that people use. And you can get pretty code with code people use, but you need to bring them along that journey, and you need to evolve with them. And you need to, like, deal with the fact that you can't make perfect decisions, right? So I just want to change the narrative around this isn't, yes, it's something we have to do. And some people might not like that. But for those of us who are looking for our software to get used, this is an opportunity, and it's a chance to really show off some engineering skills.
Yeah, it's a fun challenge to solve problems in backward compatible way, much more fun than write them from scratch. I wanted to mention that when OpenTelemetry started, there was a lot of prior art, right? The tracing is based on OpenTracing and OpenCensus. Metrics are based on Prometheus and OpenCensus. Logs, there is tons of prior art. There are areas that are new to the industry, the semantic conventions being one of them. And we are making mistakes there. We've made some mistakes initially. We are trying to correct them. We will make new mistakes every once in a while. We will need to make paths forward. We will need to think how we can make the migration smooth, how to not break end users. But it's just that on the Maslow's pyramid, our users are moving from, okay, there is just a mess with telemetry, to the new areas where the old problems are solved. There are new problems that nobody has ever solved. Maybe there will be OpenTelemetry we knew that would address them at some very distant future.
Might be drifting off topic, but I love what Josh said about you have to pretty code or used code. And I think that I do think that's an area that OSS developers fall into, and partly because our code is out there and public and visible and viewable. So we see that our code itself as an output, where when we were building internal proprietary code, like, nobody cared about that. They only cared about what the user experience was.
I just want to add one thing regarding these values. So recently I started to put more mindset on the OpenTelemetry vision strategy, etc. Like, we value performance, we value stability, and also the engineering values which are also introduced. And I think that having this mindset also is important when doing OTEP and reviewing OTEPs, because there are always trade-offs, and these are the kind of priorities that should be used when deciding which way to choose, basically. And I think that they can be used as guidelines, because otherwise it shouldn't be something, oh, I vote this is better, this is worse. We should have some principles to have a consistent strategy how we are dealing with APIs, designs, etc.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and somewhere I wanted to go next is just asking if you wanted to give a piece of advice to a newer project in the CNCF space right now on how they can start setting up a design process for building features as the project grows. What are some of the things, like maybe the principles, or maybe there's other, like, avenues people can think about? But what sort of processes would you put in place? What would you take away? What would you say remove? And then, I'm wondering what your thoughts on that are.
Just a quick tip that I thought of was explaining the rationale, the why behind stuff, and making sure that that lives on. One thing that we struggle with is in going into our specification today, it's really hard to understand, to trace that back to the why. And so, like, having that thread, keeping that thread from the proposal through the specification, through the implementation, would be really valuable.
Yeah, there's two things I would say. One is basically, in any open source project, the most precious resource is the attention of people contributing to that project. and you need to protect it in some fashion. And so this is where, to what Robert's saying, when you list out the values of the project, it lets people see and come in and say, okay, this is where the project's going. And if they have a proposal that's against one of those values or against something in there, they know not to come. What you don't want is like a failure scenario, a whole bunch of people come in with lots of good ideas, and you literally don't have time to read and review them all. So that's where you need to set up a process around proposals, make sure that that process is clear whether or not a proposal is getting reviewed or has to be auto-rejected because the community doesn't have attention right now. And you need to make it clear that saying no does not mean like a rejection, it could just mean a not now thing. Because you will get to a point where, especially if you get adopted, you will have more people willing to contribute to your project than you have people who can pay attention and review code. That has happened in CNCF, that has happened in OpenTelemetry. That's a thing that you'll have to get used to. And setting that up ahead of time so people know that expectation, that they know that no is not a rejection, a full rejection of the idea, and that you can give them a place to be successful. Like, make sure there's a place where people can contribute. If they want to join the mission of the project as it exists, they know how to join. And if they want to do something new, they know what to do. Like, you need all of those things. If I could cut something, it would be just kind of accepting everything without bounds. But we've done that, actually. That's like something we've done over the past 2 years, is trying to limit how many active efforts are in OpenTelemetry so that we can actually make progress on all the things we're doing.
Yeah, so maybe for a new project, it'd be more of getting comfortable with saying no, right? Yeah. Liudmila, I'd love to hear if you have any more thoughts. I think you have some great perspectives on these sort of things.
I would like to give an advice to contributors. So if you're contributing to a new project, don't start with a design proposal. Start with something smaller. And you actually need someone experienced in the project dynamics to, it's unfortunate, but it's necessary. And get some allies and know how to project work before you go into all this business.
And that is often, we're talking about OTEPs right now, but there is another layer, which is project proposals, which is actually forming a SIG. And so a lot of times that is something that needs to precede an OTEP. Like if you're bringing something new to the community, a new idea, a new area to work on, then you need to go through that process first.
And I just want to add that you are going more meta, more high level, and also on the language implementations, we also can have, and some have also these design proposals, etc., which are sometimes more crucial because this is the thing that people will use eventually. So design is specifically just specification, but once the design is bad in some implementation, then that's the worst thing that, in my opinion, can happen.
Okay, I thought I saw a 0. Okay, we are out of time. Okay, I was hoping to get some questions, but yeah, so this is just going to have to be a hall conversation. I do want to point out that if you are interested in talking with us more, and you don't want to find us in the hall, we're on Slack. If you want to open a discussion as well, this is a great place on the spec meeting. But yeah, otherwise, thanks for coming, and thank you everyone on the panel for communicating and talking with us today. Yeah.